Howdy, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a while. Good to be back. Took a took a nice long break for my birthday. Went out of town, spent time with family. Yeah, it's nice. Needed a little break from everything, break from technology and yeah, and on top of working full time and putting every little bit of extra time I have into this. Uh, just maintaining a balance can be tricky, slippery slope. But here we are, back. Um, as you can tell by the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about Easter Island. I'm using this kind of as a jumping off point. The members only series, I hate using that term because it's definitely not members only, but the early access members series for July is going to be Lemuria. And we're transitioning in that series with my most recent video coming out this weekend. We're going to end with the Atlantis material and transition into Lemuria. And Easter Island is I have such a huge amount of material on it that I wanted to kind of keep it separate, but also have some relevance with the Lemuria material. So that's why I chose to save it for this time. And yeah, so we'll read a few. This will be one of a few articles I cover over who knows how long, the foreseen future. And this is one of my favorite earlier articles. There's a lot of good ones we'll cover from the early 10s and 20s, 1900 10s and 20s. But this one's from 1883. And there are some older ones, but they're not quite as detailed. And the wording in this one I really enjoy. So that's why I chose it to be the first one. Not only is it one of the older ones, but it's one of the more detailed ones. So time is precious. Thanks for joining me. As always, let's hop right in here. Hope everyone's doing great. Hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July. I was going to do a 4th of July video, but I just didn't have time. Too busy. I'm sure you all understand. We're going to go full screen here. We're going to do some zooming in. Again, this is 1883. We're going to start on the left side here. A mystery of the Pacific. Far away in the South Pacific Ocean, stretching from the coast of Asia for thousands of miles to the east, there extends a vast series of archipelagos and island groups, partly, without doubt, the remains of a former continent now merged beneath the waves. Doesn't that sound familiar? Here is the far-famed Coral Sea, with its countless islets and calm lagoons, and here are numberless volcanic islands, rich in luxuriant vegetation, where nature seems to have been specially prodigal for her gifts, but which are ever the sport of the terrible subterranean forces that act with such fearful potency throughout all this region. Till comparatively recent times, little was known for certain with respect to this island of the Pacific. Medina and other pioneers of exploration had, it is true, shed some light on the subject, but the tales of early travelers were mixed up with many wild improbabilities and exaggerations. Dim stories floated about of the savage natures of the South Sea Islanders and of the exploits of Dapnir or of the Spanish buccaneers. Tales, too, of the fabulous wealth to be derived from trading in the Pacific found ready listeners everywhere, and the public credulity of the subject was too clearly shown in the history of the South Sea bubble. Of late years, through the discoveries of galleon explorers, we have learned more of the true facts of the case, and many old illusions have been dispelled. But, as has been so often said, truth is stranger than fiction, and the facts to which we are about to draw attention will yield in their wonderful nature to none of the strange and fantastic tales with which sea captains were formerly wont to astonish the credulous at home. Credulous. In the far east, forming, as it were, the outpost of the South Sea groups, is a solitary volcanic island called Easter Island. It is 1,300 miles east of Pitcairn, the next island in the series, and with the exception of Salas y Gomez, a small rock without inhabitants or vegetation, there is no land between it and South America, which lies more than 2,000 miles to the east. Easter Island is only 11 miles by 4 miles broad, yet in this small space is crowded perhaps the most wonderful and mysterious collection of remains of a prehistoric people to be found on Earth. At the southwest end are nearly 100 houses built of stone, with the walls 5 feet in thickness. The inside of the walls is lined with upright slabs of stone, painted in black, white, and red, with figures of animals and birds and with other designs. The houses are roofed in with overlapping slabs of stone. In some of these houses, numbers of univalve shells have been found. Near these wonderful ruins, the rocks are carved into fantastic shapes of faces, most of the sculptures being now almost overgrown with brush and underwood. The present inhabitants know nothing whatever of these houses, which, existing as they do in such large numbers, seem to point inevitably to a former race of natives of far higher civilization. We can understand that a former race may have erected the houses and carved the sculptures mentioned above, wonderful as they are compared with the huts of the existing natives. What follows is, however, more difficult of explanation. On nearly every promontory are erected huge stone platforms facing the sea and presenting a front sometimes nearly 300 feet long and from 20 to 30 feet high. The stones composing these platforms are often 6 feet long and are fitted together without cement. The top of the platform is generally about 30 feet broad, and the structure is being built on sloping ground. The wall facing the interior of the island is only about a yard high. Another terrace, 100 feet broad, is leveled landward and ends also in a wall of stone. On these immense platforms are great pedestals of stone, on which once stood gigantic statues, which, however, are now all thrown down and partially mutilated, with exception of those of the platform near the crater of Utuli, which are still erect. Some of those images were 37 feet high, but the average height was about 16 or 17 feet. Other statues being much smaller. The heads of these sculptured images are flat and were formerly capped by crowns of red tufa, a stone that is found only at the crater called Toronto Hall, near which have been found a number of crowns ready for removal to the statues. The faces are square and are said to be of a disdainful expression. The lips thin, the eye sockets remarkably deep, perhaps to admit of the insertion of eyeballs formed of obsidian, which is also found on the island. Captain Cook, who during his second voyage visited Easter Island, remarks that the shade of one of these statues was sufficient to shelter all his party, nearly 30 persons. He believed them to be burying places for certain tribes or families. But whatever may have been the original intention of the sculptors, the present natives can have had nothing to do with the execution of these wonderful monuments. They possess, however, small wooden carved figures, but totally different in features from the stone images. We are forced to the conclusion that the houses, platforms, and statues are all relics of a remote age. The natives have a tradition that they formerly migrated to their present abode from one of the islands of the Low Archipelago, but this throws little light on the subject. How, in any age, could a people furnished only with a stone chisel, for the Polynesians are still in the Stone Epoch, have carved such statues by hundreds and built such enormous platforms? And the difficulty is immensely increased by the small size and complete isolation of the island. At present, Easter Island remains the great mystery of the Pacific, one of the greatest mysteries of the world. The ruins of Pompeii, however, are scarcely more easily explained than those we have been describing. Pompeii is one of the Caroline Islands, Ponape, my apologies, and is about 14 miles long by 12 in width. On the bank of a creek in the Medellin harbor stands a massive wall, 300 feet in length and about 35 feet high. It is built of basalt, the stones being in some cases 25 feet long. On passing through a gateway in this wall, a court enclosed by walls 30 feet high is reached. This court is now almost hidden in parts by luxuriant vegetation, but on investigation, a terrace 8 feet high and 12 broad is found to run the inside of the enclosing wall. Low walls running north and south divide the court into 3 parts, in the center of each of which is a closed chamber 14 feet square, roofed over with basaltic columns. The labor of building these structures must have been enormous, for there are no basaltic rocks within 10 miles. With an intervening country thickly wooded and precipitous, such an exploit is evidently entirely out of the power of the present savage inhabitants. The theory that the buildings were the work of Spanish buccaneers is also untenable. No adequate explanation has yet been offered, but as in the case of Easter Island, we seem driven to the hypothesis of an ancient civilization extending over some parts at least of the Pacific. Admitting this, we might suppose that Easter Island was chosen, possibly expressly, on the account of its isolation, as the sanctuary of the religion of some confederacy or group of tribes who might, by their joint labors, have produced the mighty structures which now baffle the archaeologists. On the same suppositions, the buildings on Ponape might be considered to have been the temple of the gods of some powerful nation. But all this is mere conjecture. If there ever was such a civilization, which way did it spread? Was it from west or from the east? And in either case, how can we account for its spontaneous growth in such an isolated region and under conditions so unfavorable? These are questions which we cannot hope to answer. Probably they will always remain unanswered. The past history of the South Seas is veiled in deep obscurity. Could we but gain an insight into the remote past of this quarter of the globe, perhaps a picture would be revealed by the sight of which the tales of Montezuma and the Incas of Peru would sink into insignificance. Wow. Just love that. And an interesting side note, as tends to be the case with a lot of these articles, you find really amazing stories in the same article. And this one right here, Crag the Human Monkey, that's going to be a video on its own. It's a really interesting one. And for those that are watching the video and can pause this, you can read it for yourself. But I'll be doing a short little video on it down the line. But yeah, we're going to cover more islands in this series, obviously. We're going to start here. I got probably 3 or 4 Easter Island ones I want to share with you. And then we will definitely be talking about the cataclysm that happened there and what kind of event not only destroyed countless islands throughout the Pacific, but buried some of these statues in 30 feet of earth. And we'll talk a little more about Pompeii. But yeah, so I hope you enjoy that article. Quick little video. And for those of you that are members, stay tuned for the first episode and transition from Atlantis into Lemuria. That'll be up on Sunday. And Anomalous America, Mississippi is back on. Anomalous America, taking a long break. Just a lot of work goes into that. A lot more than people think. And yeah, that'll be Tuesday's premiere. Live episode, usual time. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Missed y'all. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.